Maggie Carter hadn't meant to fall into the digital rabbit hole. It was past midnight, the glow of her laptop casting shadows across the cluttered desk of her home office, a shrine to her 30 years teaching high school history. A link shared by her sister blinked on the screen. Jeane Dixon's 2025 prophecy, The Apocalypse They Don't Want You to See. The headline pulsed with urgency. Economic collapse, rogue AI, cities swallowed by floods. But as Maggie scrolled, a cold familiarity crept over her. The phrases global reckoning and cosmic realignment weren't new. They were ghosts. She'd seen them before, yellowed and brittle, in a 1983 Weekly World News tabloid buried in her attic, its ink smudged by decades of dust. Dixon's predictions had been a joke back then, campfire lore for bored supermarket cashiers. Now, they'd been exhumed, polished with AI-generated graphics, and pumped into the bloodstream of social media. Viral. Her finger hovered over the keyboard. Why now? Who dug this up? The article cited anonymous experts, its tone slick with faux gravitas, but Maggie's historian instincts prickled. She'd spent years teaching students to dissect propaganda, to spot the recycled narratives empires used to control the fearful. This was no different. Algorithms, she realized, had become the new alchemists, transmuting yesterday's gossip into today's gospel. The 1980s tabloid prophecy, once a laughable artifact of Cold War anxiety, had been resurrected for an era drowning in algorithmic dread, a time when retirees like her scrolled doom forecasts between checking retirement, funds, and grandkid photos. But the thrill of it unsettled her most. The article's cadence was hypnotic, its warnings tailored to prey on the existential vertigo of her generation. Those who'd witnessed the rise of the Internet, the decay of trusted institutions, the slow-motion unraveling of the 20th century's promises. We're the perfect marks, she thought, old enough to remember when news had weight, yet desperate enough to click when it screams that weight is crumbling. As rain tapped the window, Maggie opened her attic box of old papers. There it was, the 1983 headline, identical but for the date. A shiver snaked down her spine. This wasn't prophecy. It was a feedback loop, a Ouroboros of fear. And someone, somewhere, was getting rich as the snake ate its tail. The past never dies. It metastasizes. In 1983, bathed in the cathode ray glow of a Zenith TV, Jeane Dixon's prophecies slithered into American living rooms like smoke. Her voice, honeyed and tremulous, warned of Soviet satellites falling from the sky, of earthquakes cleaving California into the sea. The networks framed her as carnival mysticism, a sideshow to the Cold War's tightrope tension. But the tabloids devoured her. Weekly World News splashed her 2025 predictions, a new ice age, EMP attack, beside ads for psychic hotlines and chia pets. It was an age of knowing naivety. Audiences chuckled at the absurdity even as they clipped the articles, tucked them into Bibles, let them fester like splinters. The Y2K panic soon followed, a dress rehearsal for apocalyptic thinking. Media outlets peddled survival guides by day. Stockpile canned beans, shield your computers, and mocked the paranoia by night, blurring prophecy and fact until both dissolved into prime-time spectacle. Fear was a product, but back then, the assembly line was slow, clumsy, a grind of ink and airwaves. Cut to 2024. The serpent had shed its skin. In a Manhattan high-rise, Eleanor Voss, 63, CEO of Nexus Media, scrolled through metrics on her titanium tablet. Her empire thrived on legacy anxiety, the sweet spot of midlife dread. Vanishing pensions, creeping climate disasters, the gnawing sense that the world had moved on without them. When her algorithm flagged a dusty Dixon prophecy in a Reddit thread, her lacquered nail tapped the screen once. "Package it," she ordered. The 2025 campaign was born by dawn. Writers grafted AI-generated visuals onto Dixon's words. A glacier swallowing Miami, pension funds bleeding red, while bots inflated the narrative's reach, targeting suburban parents and retirees with surgical precision. The headline was a siren song. She predicted COVID. What does Jeane Dixon say about 2025? Never. Mind that Dixon had died in 1997. Her hits cherry-picked, her misses scrubbed from history. Truth wasn't the product. Catharsis was. The algorithms worked as designed. In flyover states, Linda McArthur, 68, shared the article to her church group chat. "This is why I've been stockpiling insulin." Her basement, once cluttered with scrapbook supplies, now held gas masks and buckets of rice. Meanwhile, Tom, Reyes, 47, a divorced father in Phoenix, maxed his credit card on a survival condo pitch, a repurposed missile silo marketed to rational preppers. The frenzy spread, a digital chain reaction, as Nexus Media's stock soared. Eleanor's team celebrated with champagne. They'd monetized the oldest human instinct, the itch to know the end, to outsmart it, to survive. But the machinery had cracks. In a parallel thread of time, 1989, a younger Eleanor, then a cub reporter, had stood in a damp Y2K bunker, interviewing a wild-eyed survivalist. "They're selling us fear," he'd rasped, waving a Time magazine cover. "The end of the world?" She'd laughed, filing the piece as satire. Now, 3 decades later, she understood the joke. The fear was real, but the sellers wore nicer suits. The same prophecy recycled, repackaged, relit, a Ouroboros of dread, its tail forever clamped in its jaws. The haunting truth lay in the symmetry. Dixon's 1983 warnings, the Y2K mania, the 2025 campaign, all pulsed with the same arrhythmic heartbeat. Technology had only refined the delivery, replacing tabloid racks with infinite scrolls, survivalists with influencers. Yet the prey remained, unchanged, humans suspended between reason and terror, desperate to believe the world's chaos could be explained, contained, by a date on a calendar. Eleanor knew this. So did the algorithms. They'd learned to exploit the midlife psyche, its nostalgia for simpler lies, its terror of obsolescence, by weaving old prophecies into new algorithms, each click a votive candle lit at the altar of doom. By midnight, Nexus's servers hummed with data, heart rates spiking in Omaha, panic buying in Tulsa, a pastor in Dayton sermonizing about the 2025 rapture. Eleanor gazed at her reflection in the tablet's black mirror. For a flicker, she saw the cub reporter again, her old self screaming silently behind the glass. Then she silenced the device. The serpent coiled tighter. Somewhere, a retired teacher in Ohio was digging through her attic, finding a yellowed tabloid, whispering, "It's the same. My God, it's the same." But the machines rolled on, grinding history into tomorrow's nightmare, profitably and forever. Maggie Carter's hands shook as she peeled back the layers of the digital labyrinth, not from fear, but fury. At 58, she'd spent her life dissecting history's cycles, teaching teenagers to spot the patterns, empires rising on propaganda, collapsing under paranoia. Now retired, she hunted a different kind of lie. The 2025 prophecy articles had multiplied like spores since her attic discovery, each more polished, more certain. Her laptop glowed in the dimness of her Ohio study, tabs open to shadowy forums and LLC registries, her notes a spiderweb of red string. Who profits? She'd traced shell companies, survivalist startups, a surge in panic-driven ads for gold bullion and bunker rentals. But the trail always dead-ended at Nexus Media, a conglomerate as sleek and impenetrable as its CEO's veneered smile. Maggie's students would have called it a deep dive. She called it war. 200 miles west, Tom Reyes choked down his third whiskey of the night. The ice long melted. His byline once meant something. A Pulitzer finalist for his exposé on opioid profiteers. Now, at 45, he ghost-wrote Clickbait for Nexus. Today's assignment? 10 Signs Jeane Dixon's 2025 prophecy is already coming true. Number 7 will shock you. The draft mocked him from the screen. He'd embedded hyperlinks to prepper gear affiliates, AI-generated images of hurricanes with dollar signs in their eyes. His editor's note hissed in his mind. Lean into the retirement angle. Old people love feeling doomed. Tom's finger hovered over the delete key. But rent was due, his ex-wife's lawyer was circling, and his daughter's college fund was bleeding dry. He clicked publish. The article went live at midnight. By dawn, it had 2 million shares. In a split-level ranch outside Indianapolis, Linda McArthur hummed "Nearer, My God, to Thee" as she stacked cans of lentils in her basement. At 70, her hands were steady, her faith unshakable. Jeane Dixon had been her compass since '83, when the prophet's words soothed her through a stillbirth and her husband's affair. The new prophecies were a sign, a second chance. She'd sold her late mother's pearls to buy a water purifier, pawned her wedding silver for antibiotics. Her Bible group called her prudent, her daughter called Adult Protective Services. But Linda knew the truth. The world was a runaway train, and Nexus Media's alerts were the only whistle in the dark. When Tom's article popped up on her feed, 10 signs, she took it as divine instruction. She ordered a $5,000 EMP-proof Faraday cage on credit. It arrived in a box stamped with Nexus's logo. The 3 orbits converged in the algorithm's petit-furt's belly. Maggie's search history flagged her as a skeptic-adjacent target. Nexus's AI fed her conspiracy threads, hoping to hook her doubt. Tom's article, optimized for midlife vulnerability, found Linda in seconds. Her purchase data pinged back to Nexus's servers, refining the next wave of fear. Climate refugees, cyber attacks, while Tom's face burned on Zoom calls as executives praised his engagement metrics. He'd become the thing he'd once skewered, a merchant of panic. His prose, a syringe injecting dread into the veins of the anxious and aging. But Maggie was close. She'd cross-referenced Dixon's original quotes with Nexus 2025 content, finding discrepancies as glaring as missing teeth. The prophecy was a Frankenstein's monster, stitched from half-truths, severed from context. Late one night, she uncovered a 2017 bankruptcy filing for a survival gear startup, now rebranded under Nexus's umbrella. The founder? Eleanor Voss's nephew. The loop closed. They're not reporting the fear, they're manufacturing it. Linda's phone buzzed as Maggie typed her manifesto. A Nexus alert. Urgent. Dixon's prophecy linked to solar flare threat. Prepare now. Her hands trembled this time, not with purpose, but paralysis. The Faraday cage loomed in the corner, its steel jaws gaping. Upstairs, her granddaughter's forgotten teddy bear lay on the couch, half buried in survival catalogs. Tom's. Breaking point came at 3 a.m. A DM from a stranger. My mom maxed her cards because of your article. She's sleeping in a gas mask. Hope you're proud. He stared at the message, then his daughter's childhood photo taped to his monitor. That morning, he emailed Maggie's blog a zip file, internal nexus documents, profit charts, the cold math of manufactured apocalypse. Maggie published the leak at dawn. Linda read it over oatmeal, her spoon clinking like a death knell. Tom boarded a bus to nowhere, his severance pay in a duffel bag. And in her Manhattan penthouse, Eleanor Voss adjusted the forecast for Q4. Astro-turfed civil unrest was trending, and ordered a new round of content. The machine churned on. But in basements and blogs, the trinity of dread lingered. The skeptic, the sinner, and the saint, each a mirror to the other's complicity. They'd glimpsed the gears, but the clockwork of fear was older than them all, a relic reborn in pixels, feeding on the one prophecy that never fails. Give them chaos, and they'll pay to see the end. Maggie's fingers flew across the keyboard, the glow of her screen cutting through the stale darkness of her study like a scalpel. Spreadsheets, tax filings, LLC registries, digital breadcrumbs leading her deeper into the maze. She'd followed the money, and it stank. Nexus Media's parent company, a matryoshka doll of shell corporations, owned stakes in Prepper, retailers hawking $900 water filters and EMP-proof solar generators. One subsidiary, Endurance Solutions, had pivoted from selling yoga mats to underground bunkers the same week Nexus launched its 2025 Prophecy campaign. The CEO's nephew sat on the board, his LinkedIn smug with hashtags Dature Resilience, Chatu Future Proof. Maggie's coffee went cold as she cross-referenced dates, her heart pounding. The survivalist ads began 48 hours before the first prophecy article dropped. They're not reporting the panic. They're scripting it. A continent away, Tom Reyes stared at his editor's email, the subject line screaming, "Kill the story." His expose, a 5,000-word dissection of Nexus's affiliate kickbacks, lay gutted in the draft folder. He'd embedded proof, leaked invoices showing survivalist brands paying Nexus for targeted editorial integration, screenshots of executives joking about doomflation ROI. For weeks, he'd told himself this piece would redeem him, that he'd claw back some shred of the journalist he'd once been. But his editor's reply was a brick to the skull. Nobody clicks on truth, Tom. They click on feeling informed. Give them monsters, not math. The office fluorescents buzzed like wasps. Tom's cursor hovered over delete. He thought of Maggie, though he didn't know her name yet. A blip in Nexus's analytics labeled Skeptic 873. Her blog posts dissecting their lies had ricocheted through Prepper forums, a pebble threatening the avalanche. Nexus's AI had already adjusted, flooding her feeds with darker conspiracies. Is the CDC hiding data? Chemtrails and the 2025 link. Divide and monetize. Maggie's breakthrough came at 3 a.m., her eyes raw from screen glare. A 2017 bankruptcy filing for a company called Safe Haven Survival. Same address as Nexus's flagship studio. The founder? Eleanor Voss's college roommate. The pattern crystallized. A closed loop of fear. Media arm invents the crisis. Retail arm sells. The cure. She screenshot the documents, her hands trembling not with fatigue, but rage. This is how empires fall, she thought. Not with bombs, but with algorithms and affiliate links. Tom's phone rang as Maggie hit publish on her blog. His editor's voice slithered through. Reyes, we need a follow-up. 10 survival gear items Jeane Dixon would buy. Make it urgent. He glanced at Maggie's post going viral, her evidence undeniable. For a moment, he saw the exit. Forward her findings, torch his career, sleep again. But then his daughter's tuition bill flashed in his mind. $12,150 due Friday. His fingers found the keyboard. Item 1. The Solar Pulse 5000, endorsed by disaster experts. The feedback loop tightened. Maggie's blog crashed under mysterious traffic spikes. Linda McArthur, scrolling through Tom's new article, added the Solar Pulse to her cart. $1,199.99 free shipping. Her credit card declined. Nexus's algorithms promptly offered financing at 29% APR. She accepted, whispering a prayer to Dixon's ghost. By dawn, Maggie's inbox brimmed with threats. Stop spreading lies! You're endangering lives! While Tom's exposé moldered in digital purgatory. Two sides of the same cursed coin. One chasing truth in the dark, the other auctioning lies in daylight. The machinery hummed on, lubricated by desperation, its cogs grinding descent into data points. And in the center, untouched, sat the unspoken truth. The prophecies were never about the future. They were a mirror, reflecting back the oldest human frailties, greed, fear, the desperate need to believe someone, anyone, knows what happens next, even if they're selling the answer. The town hall buzzed like a live wire, the air thick with the musk of rain-damp coats and simmering dread. Maggie stood at the mic, her printouts trembling in her grip. Bank records, affiliate contracts, a flowchart of Nexus's fear-for-profit machine. Across the stage, Bryce Collier, the boyish host of Apocalypse Now, smirked into his iPhone, live-streaming the chaos. His tailored blazer screamed trust. His hashtag, your 2025 reckoning, trended in real time. The crowd was a tinderbox, silver-haired. Retirees clutching annotated prophecy clippings. Gen Zers in the back row snickering into TikTok, filming their parents' doomer cringe. This isn't about the future, Maggie began, her voice steady despite the hecklers. It's about manufacturing crisis, selling panic to the scared, mockery to the cynical. Boomer Karen's mad she can't cancel the apocalypse. Shouted a teen in a Eat the Rich hoodie. Laughter erupted, brittle and sharp. Bryce sauntered to the mic, all smarm and stubble. Folks, let's respect all perspectives, he purred, winking at his camera. Even if some are stuck in older paradigms. The jab hung in the air, old, irrelevant, afraid. Behind him, a screen flashed a meme. A panic-buying grandma photoshopped into a Titanic lifeboat captioned, "Okay, Boomer." The young crowd roared, but Maggie didn't flinch. She unfurled her evidence. Nexus's kickbacks from survivalist brands. The algorithm's deliberate age targeting. They're weaponizing your nostalgia, she said, locking eyes with Linda McArthur, who sat rigid in row 3, her hand clasped around a pocket Bible and a receipt for $8,000 worth of freeze-dried meals. And you, she turned to the teens. They're selling you the right to laugh, to feel superior. But we're all the punchline. The room split like rotten wood. A Vietnam vet stood, trembling. You kids think you invented irony? We had Y2K. We had duct tape and duct-taped souls. A Gen Zer fired back. At least we're not blowing. Social Security on doomsday cults. Bryce's grin widened. Conflict was currency, and the metrics were spiking. He pivoted to Maggie, oozing faux concern. Honestly, Ms. Carter, Why deny people hope? Preparing empowers them. This isn't hope, she snapped, holding up a Nexus-branded survival starter kit, $229.99. It's predation. You're not helping them survive. You're helping them pay. For a breath, the room stilled. Linda's face crumpled. The vet sank into his seat. Even the teens paused, their phones lowering like surrendered weapons. Then Bryce chuckled, crisp and cold. Sounds like someone didn't prep for the truth. The screen behind him switched to an ad for his Apocalypse Ready merch line. The moment shattered. As the crowd devolved into shouting, Maggie clutched her papers, her victory hollow. She'd exposed the gears, but the machine thrived on the wreckage. In the exit, Linda dithered, torn between returning the meals or buying more. Outside, the teens remixed the chaos into memes. Boomer Jedden, panic cell, and Bryce? He DM'd. His producer? Clip the meltdown. Target grandparents, plus edgelords. Double the ad bids. The prophecy, it turned out, was self-fulfilling. Not of doom, but division. The real catastrophe wasn't in 2025. It was here, now, in the chasm between those who feared the end and those too jaded to care, both dancing to the same algorithm's tune. Maggie stepped into the rain, the echoes of laughter and prayers clinging to her like smoke. Somewhere, a siren wailed. The world hadn't ended. But in that room, something had. Trust, unity, the lie that truth could ever unseat profit. The apocalypse would be monetized, and everyone, young and old, had a role to play. Maggie's community meetings began in a condemned library, a relic, with peeling Carnegie plaques and the musk of mildewed paper. 10 people showed up. A retired nurse, a skeptical pastor, Linda McArthur clutching her Bible and a Nexus survival catalog like warring scriptures. "We don't prep for apocalypse," Maggie declared, tacking a flowchart of media lies to the EDA corkboard. "We prep for manipulation." The group's credo, trust but verify, was scribbled on a whiteboard, half erased by a trembling hand. They dissected fear-mongering headlines over Costco muffins, cross-referenced disaster stats with pension forecasts, and slowly, painfully, rebuilt what the algorithms had shattered. Nuance. Linda returned her Faraday cage, kept the lentils. The vet learned to fact-check viral videos. It wasn't hope, it was defiance, a pocket of light in the digital fog, but the light had claws. Maggie's blog, once a shout into the void, now drew venom. Nexus bots flooded her comments with conspiracy sludge. "Who funds you?" "Climate denialist," while prepper influencers mocked her as Boomer Karen, apocalypse cop. She didn't care. In the library's flickering fluorescence, she saw her old classroom, kids wide-eyed at Watergate, the Berlin Wall's fall. History wasn't a prophecy. It was a weapon. Tom found her site by accident, a .org link buried in his daughter's Discord rant about OK Boomer cringe. He'd quit Nexus after the town hall. His severance a pittance, his reputation ash. Now he rented a cabin in the Cascades, its silence a rebuke to the clickbait scream. His manuscript, Lies We Click, Confessions of a Doom Merchant, lay open on a splintered desk. He wrote longhand, the ink blots like bloodstains. Chapters dissected affiliate scams, the dopamine math of dread, his own complicity. At night, he read Maggie's posts, her grit a mirror to his shame. They met in a Zoom call arranged by the pastor. Maggie's pixelated face filled his screen. Steely curls, glasses perched on her nose, a question-everything mug steaming beside her. Tom expected fury. Instead, she said, "Your book's good, but it's missing the antidote." Which is stories. Real ones. So he joined her ragtag coalition, not as a journalist, but a scribe. He recorded the vet's Y2K shame, Linda's tremulous redemption, the Gen Z teen who traded meme-making for media literacy pamphlets. The cabin's walls papered with their voices, Tom felt the old hunger return, not for scoops, but truths. His book's epilogue became a field guide. How to host a skeptic circle. It sold 3,000 copies, mostly to libraries. Nexus, of course, adapted. A new series dropped. 2026, The Real Date They're Hiding. Survival gear ads now touted community-approved filters. Eleanor Voss gave a TED Talk on ethical preparedness. The machine absorbed their revolt, metabolized it, sold it back as content. But in the cracks, embers glowed. Maggie's groups multiplied. Church basements, VFW halls, a Discord server run by teens who'd mocked their parents. Tom's book, dog-eared and coffee-stained, passed hand to hand. They couldn't kill the lie, but they could outlive it, stitch by stubborn stitch. The final page of Tom's manuscript held a photo. The library group, blurred and grinning. A banner behind them, "The end is always coming. Prepare your mind first." He'd taken it on. A disposable camera. The film developed at a mall kiosk. No filters, no pixels. Just a moment, stubbornly, imperfectly real. Maggie framed her copy. When the next prophecy trended, she'd tap the glass and whisper, "We're still here." The apocalypse wasn't cancelled, but in dim rooms and quiet pages, the quiet revolt endured. Not a roar, but a hum, low and unyielding, beneath the algorithm's wail.